What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another Heart Over Height episode. Today we're going to be grading NBA teams off season on a scale of A to F, A being phenomenal, F being failure. So if you guys do enjoy this content, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment down below on what you would change about this list. Let me know. I'll be responding to the comments and we'll have a discussion. So without further ado, let's get right on into this. So it's pretty self-explanatory, right? A tier, A is amazing, F for failure. So we're going to start off here with the Atlanta Hawks. Now the Atlanta Hawks, you think, yeah, they had the #1 overall draft pick, Ricochet, in a draft class is kind of weak from what we've seen so far. He didn't really show out a whole lot in Summer League, didn't really see anything too impressive. They also traded DeJounte Murray. Now, that is good and bad. Good because he didn't necessarily fit alongside Trae Young. On paper he did, but on the court they just didn't. And then they got, in the trade for DeJounte, they got Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance, which is kind of like an okay package. So overall, I'm going to put them around the C tier. I think this one could go up if the less is more theory works for the Atlanta Hawks, where Trae Young having less helps them out more. But it could also get worse if Ricochet ends up being a bust. Next up here, we do have the Boston Celtics. Now, I think that, they went on a championship run. They re-signed a lot of their players. Everyone returned, everything like that. I think that you can't give them anything other than an A. I understand I'm a Celtics fan, but seriously, from the aspect of they just retained everyone, no one left. You looked at like the Denver Nuggets, for example. When they won their championship, they lost key guys to that championship roster in like Bruce Brown, sorry. Bruce Brown went on to sign a big deal with the Indiana Pacers. He went to go get his contract. So something like that I was expecting for the Celtics, one of the guys to be kind of left out of the loop. So you see, they ended up retaining everyone, which is phenomenal. So I would say that's an A grade. The Brooklyn Nets are up next here, and I like their offseason because they went ahead and they just full rebuild mode, got rid of Mikal Bridges and everything like that, and they ended up adding on someone like Bogdanovich, which is going to just be like probably traded around the trade deadline for a pick, and then same thing with Shake Milton. So I'm going to put them in the B+ range. I would say that this would be an A if 5 first-round picks is phenomenal. Yeah, you know what? We're going to put this in the A tier just because they got 5 first-round picks. You can't really say anything else about this. Next up here, we do have the Charlotte Hornets. Now, Charlotte, I'm going to put them in the D tier. I think re-signing Miles Bridges was not a great idea. I think LaMelo Ball's injury history is going to play a factor into this. Of course, they did bring in Reggie Jackson, some solid point guard depth if you do have an injury from LaMelo. Bringing in Josh Green, also a solid player as well, played solid minutes in the finals and hasn't really shown what he can do fully on the court because the ball was kind of dominated by both Kyrie and Luka. And then I just kind of was expecting a little bit more of this roster, them just taking another step because they did see a lot out of someone like they did see a lot out of Brandon Miller in this last season. Next up, we do have the Chicago Bulls. Now, I didn't like their offseason. Actually, we're going to put them in the D tier. I was going to put them in F, but they don't deserve F fully. Now, the only thing that is keeping them away from F is Matisse Buzelis. Their draft pick, I thought they nailed it, and I thought that I wanted to put it up higher, but the problem I have with their offseason is you didn't get anything for DeMar DeRozan. It's one of the worst trades that I've seen in quite some time. You got Chris Duarte and 2 second-round picks. I didn't love that. You then haven't made a move on Zach LaVine yet either. Nikola Vucevic either. It's just like this team is just... It's so disappointing because the value that you're holding on to of those players is dropping each and every day. And now teams don't even want Zach LaVine because he's so expensive. You could have traded him 2 years ago and gotten a whole lot more for him than you did now, or than you will get. Next up on this list, I do have the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think they had a solid offseason. Re-signing Donovan Mitchell, of course. is huge, and I think that they'll end up re-signing Isaac Okoro. So I would say that this is probably a C tier, because I'm not so sold on the idea of the starting lineup that they have with Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen. I mean, and then whoever you want at the small forward position, whether it's Max Strus or whether it's Isaac Okoro, someone like that. Ideally, you have to pick between Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, and you have to pick between Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. They have not done so I'm just not a huge fan of their offseason. It's kind of just in the middle. I mean, keeping Donovan Mitchell is huge. Next up here, this might be a questionable one. Some people might have their offseason a little bit higher, but it's the Dallas Mavericks, and I have them in the C tier. I wanted to put them above that, but I just don't necessarily love the addition of Klay Thompson. I'm not saying that he is totally out of this league and everything, he's washed and all that, but you're going to pay him that kind of money when he just came off a major injury. And I also think two key guys that played a lot of minutes for you in the finals, you let walk. Derrick Jones Jr., who was a Swiss Army knife for you, who's the glue guy that really kept you in a lot of those games in the playoffs. And then Josh Green, the only guy that was willing to shoot a three outside of, or make a three at least, outside of Luka and Kyrie. So I'm not a huge fan of this. I understand where they're, the idea of them being a little bit higher with the trajectory that Klay Thompson could bring. I just don't necessarily love bringing him in at this time. It just feels like one of those acquisitions that is going to go down in history as, damn, I wish he would have just stayed with Golden State and finished his career there, like Wade with the Bulls, or, Jordan with the Wizards, Pippen with the Blazers kind of thing. Like one of those guys at the end of their career that just tried to keep it around too much. Next up, we have the Denver Nuggets here. Now, Denver is an interesting team because they are someone that, although they lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I do like the fact they brought in Dario Saric. They also brought in Russell Westbrook, and they have potential to bring in one of the guys that's still on the board, like Lonnie Walker or something like that. So I'm going to say that their offseason probably a B, because I like the addition of Russell Westbrook, honestly. You got him on a cheap deal, and at the same time, you look at what he is willing to buy into a role. Whatever you ask him to do now, he's willing to do. So he's going to go run with that second unit, or even run in with the defense and up the defensive tempo that he brings. He's already a very up-tempo kind of player. I'm interested to see how he plays on a championship caliber team. And yeah, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, though, is a huge stinger for them. But I think that they'll be able to bounce back just fine. The Detroit Pistons are up next. This one, I actually decently liked their offseason because they did bring in Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr., as well as someone like Malik Beasley. So I'm going to put them in the B category here. Now, the one problem I have with this is they drafted Ron Holland, who's not a three-point shooter by any means. I understand some guys were falling off the board, of course, like you weren't looking to draft Donovan Clingan, or you weren't looking to take Rob Dillingham because you already have a guard. So there weren't too many options. Reed Sheppard was already off the board kind of thing. So you were like, okay, well, let's take a flyer on Ron Holland, hopefully develop his three-point shot. Now, you did bring in two guys, Tim Hardaway Jr. and Tobias Harris, who shoot the three ball pretty well. Same thing with Malik Beasley. So I like that because that's what Cade Cunningham desperately needs. Too many times this last season where he was just double-teamed time after time after time, having to put up a shot because there's no one to pass to. This season should be a lot better. Golden State is up next. Now for them, I did not like their offseason whatsoever. I'm going to put them in the F tier for this offseason. Yes, they added Kyle Anderson. Yes, they added Buddy Hield, and they added DeAnthony Melton. But for me specifically, you lost Klay Thompson, which I know I just knocked the Mavericks for that, but I also understand the idea of you were in the sweepstakes for Lauri Markkanen, and the only thing that held you back from Lauri Markkanen was pods. I would have traded Pajensky in a heartbeat for someone like Lauri Markkanen's caliber. You look at what he would have brought to this offense. They always run undersized centers at the center position, you have an opportunity to bring in a 7-footer to play alongside Draymond and Steph Curry, I would have done that in a heartbeat. I think that was kind of... They also lost Dario Saric, who's a solid off-the-bench player for them. I did not love their offseason whatsoever. Now, what they're banking on, of course, is Podziemski has a great season. He has a great jump and everything. But I also will stand by the fact I am not a huge fan of Steve Kerr as the coach. I don't love it at all. You look at Kuminga had to request a trade in order to get any sort of play time. Kevin Durant left. You had Klay Thompson left. Frustrated guys with, there's time after time after time again where Draymond Green just acts out and then they just give him like a leeway and like, oh, it's no biggie. I didn't see it. Steve Kerr says that every time. I didn't see it. I was coaching. I didn't see it. I was looking at the clock. Like some sort of stupid excuse. And it's just, I don't love it. I think that they could have done a lot more with their offseason than Kyle Anderson and Buddy Hield. No disrespect to those players at all. Buddy Hield is actually one of my more favorite players, especially this last playoffs when the one game they let him flourish. He was flourishing. The Houston Rockets, I think that they're one of the teams that is in the A tier here. I think drafting Reed Sheppard was phenomenal. I mean, he slid right into your hands. You talked about possibly trading out of there. You also got AJ Griffin on kind of a steal. And this roster looks good. They look good. They have the mixture of veterans and youth. They could be in the Oklahoma City area where they are ready to take that next leap. They're, going to make a jump. I could see that. As long as everything goes together. And then they still have Jalen Green sitting there as a possible trade asset. Some team is going to over trade for. Next up here, we have, I have the Indiana Pacers. Now, the Pacers, they had an okay offseason. I would put it around the C mark. You, of course, re-signed Pascal Siakam and everything like that, so that's cool. Good for you and everything. You brought in a flyer in James Wiseman, and then you drafted Johnny Furphy. I like this roster, though. I didn't really think you needed to do too much to it. Sometimes rosters that are like in this caliber, where they do exceed the expectations and go to the Eastern Conference Finals, for example, like the Pacers, they then next season try and do too much. They need to go all in and boom, 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 trade kind of thing. That's not a necessity. You just let your roster ride out and everything. The Lakers are always known for that. They always chase the big name and everything. I'm glad the Pacers didn't do that, and they just kept riding out their roster. The Clippers. The Clippers here, I hated their offseason. They're one of those teams that's going in the F category. You lost Paul George. You lost Mason Plumlee. You lost Daniel Tice. You are trying this whole rehab team, because you brought in Kevin Porter Jr. and players like that. You did bring in Derrick Jones Jr. I like that. Nicholas Batum, solid. Mo Bamba, solid. Cam Christie, drafted. All right. But overall, this roster, you let Paul George walk. When he wanted to re-sign, you disrespected him too. And that's not the first time. We all know about the whole Blake Griffin situation and how they were going to build a statue for him and put him on the T-shirt with guys like Martin Luther King Jr. and all the historical greats, and then traded him to Detroit, of all places. So definitely just a big bummer of a offseason for the Clippers after expecting a lot more. The Los Angeles Lakers aren't up next, and honestly, I'm going to put them in the B category because they drafted Dalton Knecht, which was a guy that fell to them. And, of course, you drafted Bronny James, which I'm not going to comment on. He could be good. He's a second-round pick. Odds are he probably won't be because he was a second-round pick. The statistical odds are that. But I did like the fact that they didn't go name chase. They always name chase, try and make something happen to where they can go get Russell Westbrook or go get Anthony Davis or something like that. This year, they didn't, which was great. I think that's exactly what their roster needs, is just continuity to build chemistry. You can't build chemistry if you're constantly trading players left and right. So I did really like that for the Lakers. Next up, the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, you drafted Zach Edey. I don't love that. I think it's around the C. You're just hoping that your roster just comes back fully healthy and you go back to where you left off when you guys were all fully healthy. Not too much to say on them. The Miami Heat, didn't love their offseason. I'm going to put it in the D category. You signed Alec Burks. You drafted Kelly Ware. Jimmy Butler turmoil is kind of coming through. You also have like question marks. You're hoping that your young guys are taking these leaps, and Jaime Jaquez and Nikola Jovic and all that. Just overall, you lost out on Caleb Martin and DeLon Wright. Caleb Martin being a huge piece of your squad that you lost. Not a big fan of their offseason. Milwaukee Bucks, I'm going to put them right around the C category. Just didn't really do too much notably. Now, of course, they didn't have too much money. Bringing in Taurean Prince, DeLon Wright, pretty solid for y'all. Just overall, of course, not anything I'm too thrilled about because of the whole like Brook Lopez drama that was there with wanting 2 first-round picks for the guy kind of thing. Yeah, definitely kind of a mess that's going on there. Everyone's a little old. Everyone's beat up, all that. Minnesota is up next, and they had one of the better off seasons. I'm gonna put them in the B category. You brought in Joe Ingles. You traded for Rob Dillingham, which I really like for them. Not this season, but give it a season or two. And yeah, so I like that for them. Of course, I think around the B category. Next up here, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, New Orleans, I liked their offseason. They traded for DeJounte Murray. They signed Daniel Tice. They drafted Evie Misi, which could be a very underrated pick. The guy's only touched a basketball for like 4 years. And he's a pretty solid 7-foot center. He could develop into something. Now, of course, you lost out on Jonas Valanciunas, Larry Nance Jr., Najee Marshall, and Dyson Daniels. Part of that due to the Atlanta Hawks trade, Najee going over to the Mavericks. But I think bringing in DeJounte was huge for them. The question, now, I would put this at a higher grade, but I was hoping that they would trade away Brandon Ingram at this point. So I'm going to keep them at a C because this will be one that like maybe just before the season or right before the deadline, they end up trading Brandon Ingram and then this grade improves because Brandon Ingram is holding back this roster. It is holding back Zion. It is holding back Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. These guys that deserve minutes, that play both sides of the ball really well, 3-and-D guys, because that's what you need around Zion. You need to be able to space the floor. Let the guy just attack the basket, and then he can kick out to one of you that ends up shooting a 3 or something like that. Then you have another guy, DeJounte Murray. What does he want to do? Attack the basket. Brandon Ingram plays this mid-range game that's really good, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't necessarily fit the Pelicans roster. The problem with Brandon Ingram is he doesn't fit a ton of rosters. His skill, he's wanting this some $200 million contract, and I don't know if a lot of teams are willing to give that to him. Next up here, we have the New York Knicks, one of the better off seasons, definitely. I'm going to give that an A grade. Yes, you did give up a lot for Mikal Bridges, but you went and you got your guy. You re-signed OG Anunoby. Jalen Brunson took a huge pay cut. That is massive. You lost out on Isaiah Hartenstein. He was going to leave. Everyone knew that. Bogdanovich left as well. Alec Burks left. Not too worried about losing those guys because you brought in Mikal Bridges. A lot of these guys on this roster are going to play 48 minutes. I could understand if people have this a lot lower. Not a lot lower, like B or C category because of Julius Randle. Expecting them to move off of Julius Randle. I think that they're going to test it out and test the waters with Julius Randle, see how he adapts to the roster if he does. If not, then they're going to move off of him. But yeah, I expect this roster to be very good. Oklahoma City might have the best offseason here. Definitely an A+ grade here. Bringing in Isaiah Hartenstein, you traded for Alex Caruso for a guy, Josh Giddey, that wasn't doing anything. And then you drafted Nikola Topic, who Topic was going to be a top 5 pick had he not tore his ACL. So who knows what kind of guy he's going to end up developing into. Now, what Oklahoma City's starting to run into is the fact that they have too many guys. You know, you have Cason Wallace over there, Nikola Topic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They're starting to have too many guards. You're going to have to start picking your guys and getting rid of the others, as in like making some moves, making some trades. They did that with Josh Giddey, though, this year, which I really like that. So good for them overall. Next up here, I have the Orlando Magic. I'm going to put it as B category. You brought in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I really liked that for them. You drafted Tristan da Silva. Pretty solid draft there. You lost out on Joe Ingles, which wasn't anything really. And Markelle Fultz also, which pretty solid defensively, but offensively wasn't really giving you too much because you have the ball-dominant guys, and he can't space the floor for Paolo. So I think pretty solid grade bringing in KCP, which solves one of your issues that you had in three-point shooting. Next up here, I have the Philadelphia 76ers. They're getting an A grade. It's them, the Thunder, and the Knicks with the top grades in this offseason. The 76ers brought in Paul George. I mean, what else can you ask for? Not only did they do that, they brought in Andre Drummond, a backup center in case Embiid does get hurt. Eric Gordon, which adds some nice depth to their roster. Caleb Martin, also adding depth. And then they drafted Jared McCain, which I do have one problem with Jared McCain, and he could get eaten alive by the Philly fans. We saw what they did to Ben Simmons because of the whole back issue and him having a phone in his pocket during practice and everything. And that might be the one bad spot for Jared McCain in the fact that he's this big TikToker, which cool, do whatever you want with your outside time. No one cares, everything like that. Go crazy. But if he starts playing poorly or if the 76ers start losing and he's got a big role, you could see some hate from the fans going towards Jared McCain, which could brutally ruin his confidence. Next up here, I do have the Phoenix Suns. I actually really liked their offseason for everything that they couldn't really do too much. They were one of those rosters that was just pushing it on the cap flexibility and everything, but then they went and got Tyus Jones, Monte Morris, Mason Plumlee, Ryan Dunn. So I really like this. I'm going to put them in the A grade for what they could do. You got Tyus Jones on a steal. 1 year, $3.3 million is nothing. I really like that for them. Here we have the Portland Trailblazers. I mean, I am not a huge fan of this offseason just because you have three centers on this roster. You have DeAndre Ayton, you have Robert Williams, and you draft Donovan Clingan. I understand the idea behind drafting him. It was, hey, we're going to draft best player available. Right now, we've got Scoot, we've got Anthony, we've got Shaedon Sharpe. We need to make a decision there with one of those three. Has to go. And then you play the other two. Center-wise, you're probably looking to ship DeAndre Ayton out the door if you can. Maybe like the Pelicans would be a good example of where he could fall, someone who needs a center. And Robert Williams, you're hoping that he ends up being healthy. When he's on the court, he's a serviceable big, but the problem is he's always injured. Next up, the Sacramento Kings. I didn't like their offseason, just like Portland. It's right around the D grade. I mean, you brought in DeMar DeRozan, which is, I just don't think he elevates the level of play for the Sacramento Kings. That is my biggest problem. I've stated that since he got traded. Nothing against DeMar himself. I just don't think he fits really well in this offense. You look at De'Aaron Fox's mid-range scorer. Sabonis likes to play down low and mid-range. And then DeMar DeRozan, mid-range guy. So there's not a whole lot of spacing here. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of gel together and everything like that. But here we have the San Antonio Spurs. I liked their offseason bringing in veterans to mentor Vic in Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, and then they drafted Stephon Castle. So I'm going to put them in the B category. I think you let Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson flourish. You see what you can get out of Keldon Johnson. I think that he'll be on the trade block. And then you kind of just go from there. You just see what Vic brings in year two. Toronto's up next. Their offseason, they're a confusing team because it's like they got quickly RJ Barrett. They have Scotty Barnes, of course. They've got Jakob Poeltl there. They added in Sasha Vezenkov and Davion Mitchell. They drafted Jacoby Walter. They lost Gary Trent Jr., which to me wasn't too much. I'm going to put them in the C category. They didn't really do too much per se. Next up, we have the Utah Jazz. Them, I thought that they could have done a little more here. I was expecting Lauri Markkanen to get traded, so I was a little disappointed. They drafted Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, and Kyle Filipowski. Filipowski has a lot of drama off the court, so that'll be a big question mark for them. And then, Cody Williams, pretty solid if he's anything like his brother. Washington is the last one. I'm going to put them in the F category. Bringing in Jonas Valanciunas, big question mark. Malcolm Brogdon, big question mark. Sadiq Bey, you draft Alex Sarr. I really like the draft of Bub Carrington, but Alex Sarr didn't look good at all. He looks like he doesn't play basketball, honestly. He just looks like he's a really tall guy. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in the F category. All right, guys. Well, if you did enjoy this video, do me a huge favor. Smash the like button. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Comment down below on what you would change about this list, A through F. Let me know in the comments. So with that being said, it's been another Heart Over Height episode, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.